Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of The Career Climb, formerly known as Talks with Julia. We took a break in March, and now we're back in full effect for what I call season 2. And on The Career Climb, we spark conversations with industry leaders, executives, and professionals, and share perspectives on the career landscape, leadership, and workplace culture. And tonight, we definitely have an industry leader on the call, Mr. Kenneth L. Johnson. I will introduce him momentarily. But if this is your first time tuning in, I'm so glad that you're here. I'm Julia Rock, the founder and CEO of Rock Career Development. And I would love for you to stay engaged with us in the chat for this conversation. So whatever platform that you're watching us on, I would love for you to comment and let us know where you're watching from, what part of the conversation resonates with you, and drop any questions if you want more clarity. I will be transparent with y'all, though. So we recently went through a tornado in Houston, and unfortunately, our internet is a little bit sketch at best. And so I will do my best to hold out on this live stream, but I will ask you guys to please bear with us as there may be some internet challenges due to the storm in Houston. But we are going to get going because I am excited for you guys to meet tonight's special guest, Mr. Kenneth L. Johnson. Before we get into tonight's conversation about AI and the impact on talent acquisition, let me formally introduce him by sharing his full bio with you. Kenneth L. Johnson stands as a beacon of excellence in the realm of diversity recruitment and career services. As the founder and president of East Coast Executives, he orchestrates unparalleled success for his clients through innovative sourcing methodologies and expansive global diversity recruitment initiatives. His prowess in the field has garnered widespread recognition, culminating in his designation as the 2022 Business Leader of the Year by the National Diversity Council. Notably, Black Enterprise magazine heralded him as the Black Enterprise Modern Man, and while Forbes Media appointed him as a distinguished Forbes career coach and council member. But Kenneth's impact, it extends beyond these accolades. He's a dynamic TEDx speaker, the driving force behind TEDx Harlem, and a facilitator of Google On-Air career workshops. Furthermore, he imparts invaluable knowledge as a contributor for Indeed.com and serves as the esteemed host of the National Urban League Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series. In alignment with his commitment to advancing opportunities for Black men, Kenneth has spearheaded the development of Black Box Tech, an innovative app designed to support the career growth of Black men. His dedication to excellence and in inclusion and diversity has positioned him as a finalist for the Black Tech Awards US 2024 Lifetime Achievement Award, further solidifying his status as a leader in the field. Welcome, Kenneth. Thank you so much for being on the platform with me.
Yeah, I told you did not have to read all of that, but I was feeling good hearing it. Wow, we're working out here.
I told you I was going to read the full thing. I'm not going to skimp. There's too many accolades for me to just try to pick and choose. You're getting the full write-up, but I'm so glad to have you here, man.
Listen, the accolade is being on the Career Climb with Julia Rock. That's it. Oh, when did you change the name?
So recent. It was very recent. It was probably in the past week or so after I was, I took the break and I did some kind of thoughts and meditation as to what do I really want this to be about. And it's really about climbing to wherever you want to be in your career. It doesn't have to be the top of the corporate ladder. That's why I didn't have climb the corporate ladder or something. It's really just you are climbing to your career goals.
Yeah, I like that name. I should have been the first one on the Career Climb. I need that. That would have worked for me. So I'm claiming the first, right? So when you bring me back and you do my bio again, it's going to be the inaugural Career Climb guest, right?
Yes.
We'll throw that on there.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not
that. Oh man, but how long have we been connected now, Ken? It's got to be 4 years, 5? It's been a minute, right?
You've told me it's that. I think it's longer than that, but I think it could be that I've seen your work even prior to knowing you, and I admired your work and what you were doing out here in the space. So with that being said, I think I was familiar with who you were, but I don't know if we had met and connected. So shout out. You've reminded me this. So shout out to Kanika Tova.
Yes.
I think, and Letitia Bird, I think, was on that with us as well. But we were on the something that Kanika was
Entrepreneur.
Yeah, for I don't know, Entrepreneur, one of those magazines, right? Yeah. And it was a good look. So appreciate you, Kay. It's a little sis right there.
Definitely. And so, and speaking of admiring your work, I mean, that's something that I have done. I know that you are not only passionate about diversity recruitment, but like you're really doing the work in the streets, and it's been recognized and noted. And so that's why I thought you were the perfect person for us to talk about AI and the impact on talent acquisition, especially when it comes to diverse talent. And so I want to go ahead and hop into the first question for you, and let's kind of just start talking about it. From your perspective, why do you think that this topic even warrants a discussion? I mean, when we think about technology, it just changes so rapidly. And should we not just all just get on board? I mean, we've gone with different cell phones, laptops, we've gotten used to technology and everything. So why do you think this conversation about AI and talent acquisition even warrants a conversation?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different reasons, Julia. One of the things is, and I agree with you, like a lot of us have kind of embraced technology, but there still are people out here that are fighting it. So I think the conversation is important, especially in Black communities. I think the conversation is important for that reason. One of the things we do well is networking. So we've been able to navigate some of the technical stuff, but it's here. It's not going anywhere. It's here to stay. And I think it's important for us to be a part of it, because as things evolve, if we're not part of it, and when I say part of it, I'm not just talking about a user, but a creator, someone who's in the room when they're making decisions about said technology. If we're not around, then it allows for biases to creep into the technology and into the software, and that's proven to not be in our favor.
No, and that makes sense. Like we've got to be at the table in order to make sure that we don't have the biases stacked against us as these things get built, because they're going to be what help to make the decisions about our future. And so, but to that point though, AI is not exactly new in the talent acquisition or recruiting process. So because I know that it's been around a while. So I just wanted to get your perspective as to the advancement of AI at this point. So not that it's introduced, but the advancement of AI, transforming the landscape now in 2024 and beyond, thinking specifically about diversity recruitment.
Yeah, so initially the AI existed in the front end, right? So top of funnels type conversations, right? So the AI existed in applicant tracking systems, right? And job boards and things of that nature. The way you got information about what was out there. AI existed there, and it's existed there for quite some time, right? But now it's advanced to the point that it's very interactive. So you may actually apply for a job and you may receive a response from who you believe is an actual person, but it's a chat bot, right? And the AI is actually analyzing your resume. Before, it would just send your resume through, and it might rate it and score it in the applicant tracking system, whether it's a Taleo-based system or whatever it is, right? Might score it, track it, and then someone's behind it kind of looking through. And that part of it still needs to be present. But we're seeing a lot of people relying on the systems to make decisions on who advances through their hiring processes. And I think that can get a little dangerous as we haven't built the systems out to spec where they allot for the differences that we have in different demographic populations.
And so I think that's interesting. I think you touched on two things. One thing I want to go back to is around the applicant tracking systems, because, there's a lot of conversation about the applicant tracking systems, kicking people out. But to your point, there's actually a person behind the scenes that's looking. Is that correct? Do I have that right?
Yeah, typically, I mean, so, and that's really the old thing, right? ATS systems. But so typically what would happen is, let's say you're a large company and you may receive, in a weekend, you may receive 500, 750 resumes. You can't anticipate that a person is going to go through and screen through all of those resumes, right? So the system would basically rate the resumes based on how they match to the position description.
Okay.
And then it would send over a rating of, say, your top, I don't know, you could ask for the top 5, top 10, top 15. Now, talent acquisition professionals sometimes they don't have the bandwidth to take a deep dive, but they'll look through that top 5, right, and start making decisions. We just want to ensure that the top 5 is really reflective of the skill sets that were presented in the 750, right? So there was a situation with Amazon, and they created a system that was to parse, review, and select candidates through their resume system, right?
Okay.
And what they found out is that the system was biased towards men. So women weren't making the cut because they were basing it on 10 years of data that reflected a very male-dominated industry. And they were even weeding out like people that came from women's colleges because it didn't jive well in the system. It rated low in the system. And if you had if your name was what they perceived to be a woman's name, so it was just weeding it out. So the system learned it really well, but so well that it weeded out really good candidates in the process. And we don't want that.
Right. And I guess, alluding a little bit to that, kind of what they built it for, clearly there's some downsides, like you said, that they're weeding out people that they shouldn't. But if you think about the overall benefits for companies further leveraging AI in the talent acquisition process, I think we talked about just helping with the workload for some folks. But are there any other benefits that you see?
Yeah, a ton of different benefits to it, right? So, of course, right? So you're talking about resume screening, candidate matching, things like that, right? It allows the recruiter and talent acquisition person to focus more on the strategic aspects of the hiring process, right? So if you're specifically speaking from the context of diversity recruitment, AI can actually identify diverse talent by mitigating unconscious biases, right? And those are the things that often influence a human decision, but sometimes it can mitigate some of that. But the algorithms have to be trained to prioritize correctly, right? Just to ensure that diverse candidates kind of make it through, specifically Black talent, right? But it's just crucial for us as humans to continuously monitor the software. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think it's a great thing, and I think it's doing amazing things for us. We're a smaller boutique firm, so it allows us to compete and have bandwidth and kind of roll through things pretty much at a pace that's consistent with any of the large organizations out here, right? So there are some benefits to AI being a part of the process, and we just need to be mindful of how we rely on it, how we utilize it, and how much we trust it.
And that was going to be my next question, for job seekers that may be on the line, right? They see the title, like the AI impact on talent acquisition. Is this something that we should be afraid of because whether it's the biases or the deep fake and you can't tell what's real and what's fake? I wanted you to speak to that a little bit. Like, should we be out here afraid of AI and Big Brother type of stuff going on?
It's the world we live in, so we should not be afraid of it. It's not going away. It's really not going away. So we need to embrace it, be a part of the conversation at both ends, right? Creator and user. And we really need to be vocal. If we see something that we believe is a discrepancy that's definitely caused by the system, we need to kind of speak to that, right? Or anything, because it's always, we're trying to make it better. So it's about refining the software, refining the processes, refining the approach, and making people comfortable. I remember I worked we had a client, and the client wanted everybody to submit a video. This is probably 15 years ago, maybe 10. No, probably 15. Okay. The client wanted everyone to submit a video, just a brief video description of themselves, right? And this is when, all right, so let's just be candid. We're going to have a Black conversation here.
All right.
This is when people, and a lot of Black people, didn't even want to put their photos on LinkedIn because they thought they would be discriminated against. Mm-hmm. This was a real thing. I was getting this from my clients and candidates. So I was telling the gentleman, I said, listen, it seems like the right thing for you to have everybody do a video, but I'm concerned that we're really going to lose qualified candidates just because they don't want to do that. People aren't that comfortable with it. So I think things evolve. People, now that we're in a Zoom environment constantly, and we're here doing this virtually, right? I think people are becoming a little more confident. Everybody has Instagram, and they're actually creating their own content, and they're front facing with cameras often. So I think people will get used to it, but it's nothing to be afraid of. It's not going anywhere. And honestly, if leveraged correctly by the right organizations, it's going to benefit us by taking some of the human element out of the early parts of the decision-making process. You're still going to have to probably walk in there or get on a Zoom and prove that you're the right candidate for the job. But at least we want to be able to get to that position.
Yeah, and I think as I'm listening to you talking about the fact that we shouldn't really be afraid of it, it's not going anywhere. But like you said, there's got to be some continued iterations of this. And so I guess where we are today, in terms of the pitfalls that we're experiencing with AI, is it truly just the racial bias, or are there other kind of pitfalls that you see when it comes for organizations hiring diverse talent? I want to dig into the pitfalls a little bit more.
Yeah. So it's not all racial, as I mentioned. Like one of the biggest cases is the gender difference that was happening on Amazon, right? So you don't want the AI, because of the individuals that created the AI. You don't want the AI to reinforce existing biases, right? If the algorithms were trained on biased data, that's what's coming back out at you, right? And it can be inadvertent, right? But it'll perpetuate inequality rather than mitigate it, right? So to avoid this, companies really need to ensure that their AI systems are trained on diverse and representative data sets. That's going to be extremely important. Have to have regular audits and updates of the systems. That's necessary to identify and correct any bias, right? But additionally, you have to, and I keep honing in on this, Jay, you got to incorporate human oversight into the final stages of the recruitment process, right? And that just helps balance out the efficiencies of AI with critical human judgment needed to foster diversity. So that's why it's really important for us to be here having this conversation, and for others to have the same conversation and make people aware that, listen, we don't want you to make a misstep and then tell us about it after people have not received opportunities.
And I think you're making a very important point around keeping the systems updated. And during my time in corporate America, when you work for some of those larger firms, the systems become archaic because it's like, hey, we know what works. Let's not upset the apple cart. Let's not change anything, because we could have ripple effects. But for something like this that you introduce into your talent acquisition process, you can't afford to let it kind of get stale or get old, because like you said, you could introduce biases into the process that are unplanned, because you're just trying to keep the engine running versus about being forward thinking.
It's interesting. So, and this is a reach here, what I'm getting ready to explain, but it's very much like, so I have a client and they rely a lot on the influencer space.
Okay.
But so they have influencers that are white and influencers that are Black, and they were working off of specific platforms. But if you just looked at the numbers didn't equate. The numbers didn't jive to equality, right? So you're basing things on a standard that's not equal to all, and you're basing influence on that. And they were wrong, but they corrected it because the influencers told them, hey, listen, this isn't how this works. I can't take a deep dive because they ended up getting sued about it, right? But the point was that the influencers brought that to them, saying, hey, you can't judge us on this sliding scale here, well, on this straight scale, because we're not talking apples to apples. And but that allowed for change to be made. And so I think we need to be just diligent in our willingness to communicate when we think something might not be working as it's supposed to. And sometimes that's hard, because with software, we always think it's right. We honestly think it's right sometimes, right? So This is why, like you were talking about deep fakes and everything. You do Google searches. Look, I could probably do the Julia Rock Google search, and they say that Julia's worth $20 million. Now, I know it's more than that, but that's what people want to believe, right? So
from your lips to God's ears.
Yeah, sometimes we just have to be mindful that it's technology and it's not perfect, but they're doing a really good job of it's based off of data that they've received from us.
Right.
So, we're flawed and the data's flawed sometimes, but we just need to find ways to use it to make things equal and maybe even a little simpler. Like we just need to find ourselves in those spaces.
And speaking of making something simpler, I wanted to ask specifically about East Coast executives, leading diversity recruitment firm. You guys are out here getting it done. I really did want to ask, can you share an example as how your organization has successfully, utilized AI, to enhance the efforts that you guys are doing to whether streamline the process or make it simpler?
Yeah, so we use it in a couple different ways, and we've tried a lot of different things. I think we were, I figured out that if it's going to help me do less work, I'm all for it, right? So we
work smarter, not harder, right? Work smarter, not harder out here.
Yeah. So for us, we've used it. The one thing that was huge for us when the technology came out, when you can parse resumes, right? Because that was somebody actually entering that data into the system. So that allowed us to literally just send the resume via email into the system, and it auto-populates all the fields. That's a small thing for us. That's a small thing, but for us, we're talking about hours, right? So that somebody that could have been sourcing talent was doing data entry, and that wasn't the best case scenario for us, right? So that's one way. That's one of the original ways that I start thinking, oh wow, this is going to work for us. But we use it as we're customizing position descriptions that we receive from our clients for searches. Sometimes when we send them through this technology that we use, we find that maybe the position descriptions are speaking more to men than women, right? Or maybe the position description is biased and they're using biased terminology. So we send it through our systems, and they're able to make some suggestions on how we should maybe rephrase something and things of that nature, just to allow and to attract more talent. And it works, right? We've seen in some cases 15, 17% upticks in the amount of candidates we receive just off of tweaking an actual resume. So there's that. From a social media perspective, we use some of those things just to track, just data tracking on who's touching base, and everybody's doing that. But that's all AI, right? It's all the same. It's technology, and it's allowing us to get better at what it is that we do. And I was one of the first people to say, well, I wasn't one of the first, because I got it from there's a young lady named JT O'Donnell who's out in this space doing amazing things. Yeah. And this was years ago, but she used to teach this technique where you take the position description and you put it into a system, a word cloud system, and that system picks out the keywords. And then you take those keywords and make sure they make it into the candidate resume, right?
Right.
So in the initial stages, we were doing a lot of that just to attract our clients. So yeah, they've hired us to conduct a search, but the resume comes into us. And of course, I'm like, Julia, well, when we had this conversation, you told me that you do X, Y, and Z, but I don't see it on your resume. And it's really important to them because it's listed in the position description 3 times. It's on their company website 4 times. So we would take all of that data, drop it all into word clouds, find out what the keywords were, and then put them in the resume. So when the talent acquisition person on the other side gets the resume and they have to run it through their Taleo system for EEOC reasons, that you're going to rate high because the system is rating you against the job description.
And so what I love about what you just shared is the fact that you guys were on the front end of kind of AI process in job applications and attracting talent. Yeah. And then as we look further along now, it seems like you guys are, again, still looking to streamline the processes. So it sounds like you should be consulting with companies on how to improve their systems. I mean, that's what it sounds like to me, that if they're trying to improve, that you guys have some things that you've already been doing that may be beneficial for them to implement in their programs.
Yeah, we're here for hire. We do that work. Or they can just have us do the search. It's up to them at this point, right? But yeah, it's just been something that it was out of necessity, right? Because we wanted to, it's one of those things, right? So we operate as a diversity recruitment firm with a specific aim on Black talent, and we already know our candidates are going to. Well, the companies that work with us, they're committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that's one thing, right? And we appreciate them and we acknowledge them for that. And we're happy to be their business partners. But the flip to it is that the company does one thing, the hiring manager is a whole nother person.
Fair.
And we don't know what that person's commitment is. So we need to present our candidates in the best light. And we work with some of the most talented people in the world, needless to say. So we don't want them to be excluded because of a lack of keywords on a resume, right?
Technicalities and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, let's do everything we can do and leverage technology to put them in a position where they're getting seen by a person.
And so speaking about candidates and job seekers, I want to shift gears a little bit to what job seekers themselves can do to further educate themselves on the changes in the recruiting processes, due to kind of more AI powered platforms and systems. Because again, there may be people who are listening who are like, oh, they're looking at the keywords, they're looking at this. And so people may be getting that feeling of anxiety potentially around, well, what do I need to do to make sure I'm navigating this process successfully? So any thoughts on how we as job seekers can actually go and educate ourselves?
Yeah, sure. So, I always share with everyone, this is the information cycle. We're in it, right? So transparency and communication are key. We make it a point at East Coast Executives to inform our candidates about how AI is being used, not only in our recruitment process, but what data is being analyzed, we believe is being analyzed on the other side with our business partners. We assure them that their privacy is the top priority, right? That's important for people now because we're handling a lot of information and we try to remain in compliance with privacy laws and ethical standards and things of that nature. But it's really just emphasizing that AI is used simply to enhance, not replace, right? A lot of people are very suspect of AI. And we like to just let them know that even if they're in an interview setting and people start speaking about software and tools that they're using that maybe they're not familiar with because they didn't use them at their prior employer or their current employer, it's not there to replace you. It's there to really maybe even provide some more data points on human decision making. So explaining how AI helps just eliminate the biases and create a level playing field helps our candidates really understand that these tools are in place to support fairer and more equitable hiring practices.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So for those of you who are listening, if you have questions, we're coming up on the last few questions that I have. So I would love to hear your thoughts, comments in the chat. Thank you, Gary, for your comment. Seeing that ChatGPT is now adding Fox News to their data sets. Did not know that. So I learned something new today. But if you've got questions, comments for Ken, please drop those in the chat on whatever platform you are watching on. And so I want to shift to looking ahead, Ken. So when we think about what's coming in the future, what innovations in AI do you anticipate will have the most significant impact on diversity recruitment? And how is your organization, East Coast Executives, how are you guys actually preparing for these changes and hopefully maybe sharing it with your peers, kind of peer talent firms?
We're not sharing anything with our peers. We're not sharing it. No, I'm just playing.
Keeping all the secrets. Y'all keeping all the secrets, Ken.
We don't want people to know the secret sauce, right? Listen, anybody that knows me, anybody that operates in the space knows that I share openly. I think that there's space for us all to win, and we all win together. And that's really what this is all about for us at East Coast Executives. We believe the future of AI and diversity recruitment lies in advanced predictive analysis, Jay. The analytics state that, machine learning states that these technologies will allow us to better forecast not only hiring trends, but identify skills that will be in demand in the future, right? So that's really important because, as the machine learning gets smarter, we kind of understand what we need to do, what skills we'll need to do, right? So if you just look at the personalized candidate experience, right, I think that's going to be important, and that's going to be a big part of the future. It's going to be prevalent, ensuring that each candidate feels valued and engaged throughout the recruitment process. AI can be sterile, right? It's not conveying emotion, right? So at East Coast Executives, for us, the key is to leverage the AI, but also invest in continuous learning and development for our team, so we can not only stay ahead of the technology advancements, but we also want to partner with tech innovators to pilot like cutting edge solutions and things of that nature that will help us maintain our place as the leader in diversity recruitment. But that all comes back to what anybody can say about their experience with us, not the AI, but with us. So we want to leverage AI, but the real important thing for us is to definitely keep the humanistic side of the work that we do front facing and in place, because that's the way we'll champion inclusive and equitable workplaces.
And I think that that last point is the key point, right? That I think that there's this fear that AI is going to take over everything and there's never going to be a human involved. But I think we from what we've seen is that even if AI can take some steps out of the process and streamline them, in order for it to be successful, you're going to need a human or a team of humans to vet the data, vet the process, monitor, make sure the right kind of candidates, because technically you should be looking at your full talent pipeline. So not just who's coming in, but who's getting developed, who's getting promoted, all of those things. So if you notice that you're looking at your metrics and you're looking at the organization and you're noticing it's like, okay, it's not enough women, it's not enough this, like something is wrong. And but that level of due diligence is required. And that only can come, if you keep having humans involved in the process who are doing this kind of iterative discussion.
So listen, so I spoke about this before. It might have been something that we were on together before, whether it was the National Urban League Digital Career Success Series or just kind of having a conversation with you, because, you're one of my favorite people to talk to. Right? but it's going to be, it's important for people to understand it's not going anywhere, right? So we have to embrace it as such. I can't get away from that. Like, we need to be the people leading this and be part of the conversation. And there was a gentleman. His name is Paolo Giordano, right? Okay. TEDx Harlem speaker, by the way. But prior to doing his TEDx talk for Harlem, he did a talk. I want to say it was somewhere downtown. So we're here in Manhattan. So everybody out there listening, when I say downtown, somewhere that's not Harlem, right? So
anywhere below 115th. Okay, got it.
Maybe 110, right? Anywhere that you're downtown. So anyway, he did a simulator, and he just did his simulator based on male and female, men and women, a simulator of hiring practices coming into a company. And this is available on if you do a Google search for Paolo Giordano a TEDx, you'll see it on YouTube. Mm-hmm. But so he did this simulator, and it speaks to hiring practices. So then they add some bias into the simulator where they start hiring maybe 2 more men, right? Mm-hmm. Than women each time. 1 woman, 2 men, like intentionally. Okay. The bias is going there. When you start thinking about the inequities and people leaving, so a lot of the women start leaving the organization because they felt they weren't being promoted, things of that nature, right? So then that started happening. And then the men were receiving the promotions, right? And that started happening. So the top was very male dominated, and the people coming in, it was a constant pipeline of very, very homogeneous type of candidate, right?
Right.
And 10 years of that took 100 years to correct.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, so if you just look at it from standard, anytime there's a bias, and we've been living with this for hundreds of years, bias in hiring, which is why it was so important for us at East Coast Executive to step out and say, hey, we're the diversity recruitment leader. We're trying to assist and support not Black talent, of course, but companies. We're trying to support them in getting better, because there is an ROI on the work that we do and the work that individuals do that come into the organization. And as we start to see the changing demographics of this country and the world in general, I think it'll even be more important. But yeah, it took 100 years to course correct on that bias. So what company has that? Who has that?
Right.
And then whoever has it, does that benefit me and you? Like, you got 100 years to wait? No.
Right. The world will be a very different place in 100 years. And I guess, I'm going to throw a curveball question in here for you around thinking about that simulator. And then you're thinking about the backdrop now in society when it comes to DEI being, whether it's, they're removing the positions and they're trying to shift it to a different focus and say, let's have everything being merit-based. I mean, how much more important is it for us to have these kinds of conversations, particularly around DEI and biases, knowing what we know about the possibility or how long it will take us to correct them?
Yeah, it's important to have the conversations, right? But what's more important is who's having them and who's in the room. I think there's some decision makers that have basically tapped out of the conversation, and we need them back in the conversation. We need them leading the conversation to make real change. Not to say that you and I aren't extremely important, but this topic is so much bigger than the two of us. And I just think that, a lot of the people that stood up 3-4 years ago and said, we're going to make change.
Yep. The statements that came out, the Twitter and Instagram statements, remember those? Yeah.
They're really quiet now. And that's concerning, because we really need them to say, we're not reneging on this. Like we're still up. So, I think we need to start holding people accountable. So I did a TEDx talk called The Face of Workplace Diversity. And that was kind of the catch at the end, right? We're all beacons and carriers of the torch for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So if you see inequities, even in your workplace, in your community, in your family, you need to confront them and approach them. And so everybody really is the face of workplace diversity, because we don't just work and go home, right? We bring everything with us. People are coming to work as their whole selves on a certain level, but you're definitely bringing your experiences from home and your community into the workplace. And we all want to play in the sandbox. So let's start confronting bad behavior.
And I love that. Let's start confronting bad behavior. I was having a conversation with someone on allyship the other day, and it was like, allyship, yes, coming and talking to someone after the fact is appreciated, but it's really important to confront the bad behavior in the moment, right? To really stand up and have the courage of conviction to say something. So I love that idea of actually confronting the bad behavior, not just kind of talking about it off to the side. Yeah. So I appreciate that.
And that's on both sides.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. So I know that I am taking up a ton of your time. So we're going to get to the last couple. We're going to get to the last couple questions. But thank you, Chandra, for the comments around great information and tips on successfully integrating AI in job seeking and recruiting. Thank you, Chandra. And we had another user that said predictive analysis not only helps with talent recruitment, but also talent retention. Cheat code. So thank you so much. So as we close out this discussion, I just wanted to ask you, Ken, so what closing words of advice would you have for job seekers? You hear so much about layoffs right now. Now there's AI in the talent recruitment process. Like there's just so much happening for job seekers. So when you think of your position in this space at East Coast Executives, et cetera, what words would you have for the job seekers that are listening right now?
All right, this is going to sound, I don't even know how this is going to sound, right?
We're just going to come out and say it. We're winging this here, guys. I don't know what
I'm not going to wreck the career climb reputation, right? It's not bad. We're good. I've been known to do that on a couple shows. They're like,
that's why I was just like, I don't know what he's going to say, y'all. Deniability right here.
For anybody that's serious about their career, we live in an unbelievable time right now. For hundreds of years, education, resources, and tools were not available to huge swaths of the population. Some it was financial, some it was access, right? Just weren't available.
Right.
We live in a world today where even if you go into the Black Box app, I can offer you free career tech training certificates from Google, one of the biggest companies in the world. No cost. That was unheard of 10 years ago even, right? To have those type of opportunities. You can study from your home in Houston. You can study at MIT.
Right.
Right? Yeah. Like amazing things, amazing opportunities existing. So I think as people in the workplace and practitioners or whatever it is that you're doing, just know that professional development is the key to career success. Yeah. So always find ways to improve. I was talking to a great friend yesterday, Nicole Smith, life and executive coach Nicole Smith, and she spoke about just people really taking the opportunity to get better, right? And using resources and being a continuous learner. And I think that's just an amazing thing for people to take in. You really have an opportunity to learn from home for minimal cost. And it's respected by recruiters, hiring managers now. You can literally walk in and say, hey, I took this course online, and they're like, oh, that's great. So now you know about project management, right? Like, so like you really can do this and they'll respect it. And I think that's important that no one can really say I didn't have access to that information. Now there's some there's some tech deserts out here too, like access to Wi-Fi and things of that nature.
Agreed.
There's things out here that prevent people from getting things right. I'm not naive to that, but I do know for a fact that we can all really network through on LinkedIn with people like Julia Rock and other people that are amazing at what they do. That wasn't available to people. You and I had a conversation before you came on about you basically connecting with someone on Instagram that might add extreme value to what it is that you do. You wouldn't have been able to find that person 15 years ago. Right. It was almost impossible for you to find that person. But that's the world we live in. So I just tell everybody, view your career as something that's living and breathing and growing. It's not a stagnant place. Those days are over. We don't sit at places for 30 years and get the gold watch anymore. You got to go out and make things happen.
Man, I love that. And especially if people are afraid of AI coming and taking your job, if you continue to develop and build yourself and build your skills, you can't be replaced by a machine, right? As long as you are continuing to gain and build and learn and grow. So
it's a tech revolution. So the jobs will be there. So build the skill sets for the jobs of the future, right? And it's the future of work.
Man, thank you so much. This has been such a rich conversation, Ken. Thank you so much. So before we wrap up, if folks want to get in touch with you to learn more about East Coast Executives, learn more about your work with TEDx Harlem or with Black Box Tech, please let the folks know where they can find you.
They can find me somewhere near Lenox Avenue. They can just come uptown and we can talk. No, listen, if you're not coming to Harlem to talk, then you can catch me at eastcoastexecutives.com. There are links there to all of our social media. I love LinkedIn as a place to just kind of hang out. I like spend my evenings on LinkedIn now, gathering information, connecting with people, admiring the work that people are doing out here in their own spaces and learning. That's big for me. So LinkedIn is great. The website is great. Harlem.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ken. And thank you all for watching this evening. Thank you for coming to this episode of The Career Climb. We will be back next week at the same time with a new guest. So please be sure to tune in. And if you want to connect with me, I am on LinkedIn as well as all social media platforms at The Julia Rock. You can come find me and connect with me. Thank you guys again for watching. Thank you, Ken, again for being here with us. And I'll see you guys next week. Take care.